George Smith Patton Jr., November 11, 1885, December 21, 1943. A full, chronological, documented account of every major event and every recorded strange or controversial action in his life. 1885-1903. Childhood and early signs. Born on a 2,000-acre ranch in San Gabriel, California, into one of the wealthiest families in the state. The house was full of Civil War relics, sabers, revolvers, blood-stained letters from Gettysburg and Pickett's charge. His grandfather, Colonel George S. Patton Sr., Yuncoamse Massam, had died leading a Virginia brigade. His great-uncle was killed at Winchester. From the moment he could walk, he carried toy guns and played soldier. At age 6, he found a stick of dynamite in the barn, bit the fuse short, lit it, and held it until it exploded. The blast blackened his face, burned off his eyebrows, split his forehead. When the family came running, he was sitting calmly in the smoke, watching his own blood drip onto the dirt, smiling. At age 8, he rode a pony until it collapsed and died of exhaustion. He climbed off, looked at the dead animal, and said, "It was too weak." At 11, he was already reading Caesar's commentaries in Latin and reciting the Iliad from memory. Severe undiagnosed dyslexia made every book a nightmare. He repeated an entire year at a private school and still barely passed. 1904, 1909, West Point. Entered the US Military Academy in 1904. Failed English and had to repeat his plebe year. Graduated 46th out of 103 in 1909. 46th. Academically, dead last in conduct. In one recorded fencing bout in 1909, he drove his saber so deep into an opponent's forearm that it lodged in bone. Blood sprayed across the mat. Patton twisted the blade free and walked away without a word. The other cadet never fenced again. He set the academy record for the pistol and was the only cadet ever to be named Master of the Sword for fencing. 1912. Stockholm Olympics. Competed in the first modern pentathlon. Shooting phase. One bullet completely missed the target. Patton insisted it had passed through an existing hole. Judges refused. He finished 5th. That night he told his wife, Beatrice, he had lost at the ancient Olympic Games too, and would be sent back until he won. 1913, 1915. Early Army service. Designed the last US cavalry saber, the M1913 Patton saber. Spent hours alone on horseback at night, riding across the Texas border country, revolver in hand, looking for smugglers to shoot. 1916, punitive expedition, Mexico. Lieutenant Patton convinced General Pershing to let him take 3 Dodge touring cars, the first motorized unit in US Army history, into Mexico to hunt Pancho Villa's raiders. May 15, 1916, San Miguel de Cruz's Ranch, Chihuahua. Patton and 10 men surprised 3 armed villistas in the courtyard. Captain Julio Cardenas and 2 bodyguards. Patton stepped out, drew both ivory-handled revolvers and fired 6 times. All 3 dropped. Cardenas was still breathing. Patton walked over and shot him through the head at point-blank range. He then personally tied the 3 corpses to the cars, 1 across the hood, 1 to each fender. Every time a body slipped off on the rough ride back, he stopped the convoy, retied it tighter, and continued. When they rolled into camp, blood was still dripping from the radiators and pooling in the dust. Photographs of the bodies lashed to the cars appeared in newspapers nationwide. Patton was promoted to first lieutenant and became famous overnight as the Bandit Killer. 1917-1918, World War I, France. Volunteered for the new Tank Corps. Created and commanded the 304th Tank Brigade, America's first. November 1917, Cambrai, first tank battle in history. Patton walked ahead of his tanks under machine gun fire to guide them through the mud. September 26, 1908, Saint-Mihiel offensive. Thick fog. Tanks lost. Patton leapt from his Renault tank, pistol in one hand, walking stick in the other, and ran ahead of his own infantry. Screaming for them to follow, a German machine gun opened up from 10 yards. A burst tore through his left thigh and buttocks. He collapsed into a shell crater, blood pouring out. Instead of lying still, he crawled forward through barbed wire, continuing to direct tanks by voice and hand signals until he passed out from blood loss. Medics found him hours later, sitting on a pile of German corpses, using their blood to scrawl kill on a tank hull. Surgeons wanted to amputate the leg. Patton drew his 45 .45 Colt and threatened to shoot anyone who tried. The leg was saved. The limp remained for life. He was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, Distinguished Service Medal, and Purple Heart. 1919-1939, peacetime. Openly told family, friends, and staff that he had lived previous lives as a Roman legionary at Cannae, a knight at Crécy, a Napoleonic hussar at Waterloo, and a soldier at Troy. He claimed he could smell battlefields he had never visited in this life and described ancient battles in perfect detail. He kept a cavalry saber by his bed and sometimes woke up screaming, clutching it. 1932's Bonus Army, Washington, D.C. President Hoover ordered the removal of 20,000 protesting World War I veterans. Major Patton commanded the cavalry. He led mounted troops with drawn sabers through the crowds while infantry used tear gas and fixed bayonets. 2 veterans were shot and killed, hundreds injured, camps burned. Patton later wrote in his diary, "A few killings would have been the best lesson." 1940-1942, Desert Training Center, promoted to Major General, created the Desert Training Center in California, Arizona, 1,000 miles of hellish terrain to prepare American troops for North Africa. Soldiers died of heat stroke. Patton called it good training. 1942-1943, North Africa, Operation Torch. Patton commanded the Western Task Force that landed in Morocco. After the American disaster at Kasserine Pass, February 1943, Patton took command of the shattered Faykum Corps. Within 10 days, he turned it into a disciplined, aggressive force through non-stop drills, profanity, and public humiliation of officers. 1943, Sicily campaign. Patton's 7th Army captured Palermo in 4 days and raced Montgomery to Messina. The slapping incidents fully documented in U.S. Army medical records and sworn witness statements. August 3rd, 1943, 15th Evacuation Hospital. Private Charles H. Cool, 20 years old, no physical wounds, diagnosed with psychoneurosis anxiety state, moderately severe, and dysentery. He was sitting on a box, shaking. Patton asked, "What's the matter with you?" Cool answered, "I guess I can't take it." Patton slapped him across the face with his glove so hard the helmet flew off, grabbed him by the collar, dragged him outside, and kicked him in the rear, yelling, "You yellow son of a bitch! Don't ever come back to a hospital." August 10th, 1943, 93rd Evacuation Hospital. Private Paul G. Bennett, also diagnosed with shell shock. No physical wounds, same conversation. Patton struck him twice across the face, kicked him repeatedly, dragged him out of the tent, and threatened to shoot him if he ever saw him in a hospital again. Both incidents were witnessed by dozens of doctors, nurses, and patients. The story broke in the American press. Eisenhower forced Patton to apologize to the 2 soldiers individually, to all medical personnel, and finally to every unit in 7th Army. Thousands of men standing in formation while Patton read a prepared statement. Privately, he told his staff he stood by his actions and would do it again. 1944-1945, Northwest Europe. After D-Day, Patton's 3rd Army became the fastest moving army in history, covering 600 miles in weeks, liberating much of France. December 1944, Battle of the Bulge. Patton executed a 90-degree turn of 3 divisions in blinding snow, marched and fought 100 miles in 72 hours, and relieved Bastogne. March 1945, crossed the Rhine, captured 300,000 German prisoners in the Ruhr Pocket. By 1945, after the German surrender, Patton repeatedly told reporters and senior officers that the Allies had fought the wrong enemy, that the Soviet Union was the real threat, and that the US should immediately rearm the German army and march on Moscow. These statements were widely reported. Eisenhower removed him from command of 3rd Army and reassigned him to the 15th Army, a unit that existed only on paper to write the official history of the war. December 9th, 1945, near Mannheim, Germany. Patton was riding in the back seat of his Cadillac staff car. Speed under 30 mph on the way to hunt pheasants. A US Army 212-ton GMC truck driven by Technical Sergeant Robert L. Thompson suddenly turned left, directly in front of the Cadillac and collided head-on. The impact crushed the Cadillac's front end. Patton's head struck the metal partition. His neck broke between the 3rd and 4th cervical vertebrae. Blood poured from his mouth. He looked at his chief of staff and whispered, "This is a hell of a way to die." He was paralyzed from the neck down but conscious. Rushed to the 130th Station Hospital in Heidelberg. For 12 days he lay in traction, talking, joking, smoking, planning Christmas at home. On the night of December 20th, he told the nurse, "Tomorrow I'm going home. Get my uniform ready." Morning of December 21st. The nurse left the room for a few minutes. When she returned, Patton was dead, eyes wide open, faint smile on his lips. Official cause: pulmonary embolism from blood clot. No autopsy performed. The truck driver was never charged. The truck disappeared from records. The accident file remains partially classified. He was buried on Christmas Eve 1945 among the soldiers of his Third Army in the American Military Cemetery at Ham, Luxembourg, exactly as he had requested years earlier. His final diary entry, written the night before the accident. This is the end of one life. The next time I will kill faster.